For the second round of gravel to be used on my road, my buddy put me in touch with a service that could get me about 16 tons of gravel. Unfortunately, due to a miscommunication, and also partially due to the size of the truck, they dumped the gravel into one giant pile rather than starting the pour and driving down the road. This left me with a giant 16-ton pile of gravel sitting in the middle of my road, and I currently do not own a tractor. Fortunately, my neighbor owns a tractor with a front-end loader and very graciously helped me spread the gravel out. There was a storm coming and he was in a bit of a time crunch, so unfortunately he was able to get most of it done, but there was still quite a bit that I needed to do by hand. The road is already looking a lot better, but you can't tell from the pictures. There are some spots where the gravel's almost 12 inches deep, so I started shoveling it into a lawnmower trailer my brother loaned me and pulling it behind my four-wheeler and manually shoveling it into low spots. Even though I loaded the trailer carefully, I still unfortunately put too much gravel in it and collapsed one of the axles. I didn't let this slow me down and continued to use it as more of a sled than an actual rolling trailer. The setup wasn't exactly efficient, but I was still able to do what I needed to do. Luckily, my brother had recently come into the ownership of a pull-behind box blade used with ATVs and lawnmowers, so he came by the house to let me borrow it. We initially tried to use the blade without any additional weight on it, but it just didn't work very well. The blade seemed to skip around and wouldn't hold a straight line. It did cut the gravel a little bit, but as you can see, it just kind of skates off to one way or the other. Our genius solution to this problem was to have one person stand on top of the blade and manually control it with their feet, which in the end actually worked really well, because you could hop on and hop off the four-wheeler as needed, depending on how thick the gravel needed to be in that area. Before we completely flattened the gravel road, we took advantage of some of the larger lumps and bumps to have some fun on the four-wheeler. After a full day of dragging gravel with the four-wheeler and blade, and moving small piles of gravel with a shovel, we managed to get everything smoothed out, and the gravel road started looking pretty good. I had a little bit of cash left over, so we decided to get one more load of gravel. We hired the original truck company, which brought in a much smaller dump truck. They report about 10 tons of gravel, but they're more willing to dump it and drive forward, making much less work for us. The gravel road now goes from the gate by the roadside almost all the way to the meadow. It stops about 10 feet shy of the meadow, where I have some really deep ruts. The driver of the dump truck suggested that I get a load of sand to fill those ruts, rather than paying for gravel, since sand is much less expensive. So I had a big load dumped right there, and Davis and I worked several days shoveling it out by hand. Davis was excited to help, and honestly I was surprised that he got the concept so well, since he's only 2 years old. He wasn't exactly putting the sand where I wanted it, but he worked really hard anyway. In the end, the sand worked really well filling in the ruts, but I don't think I can continue buying piles of sand to even out the meadow because of cost. I think I'm going to switch over to using mulch and fill in the ruts with that, since I can get it for a little bit less.